O Lord of hosts, be with us, for we have none other help in times of adversity but Thee. O Lord of hosts, have mercy on us.
Welcome back, everyone. This is David Patrick Carey with Church of the Eternal Logos, and today I want to speak to you guys about who was Saint Maximus the Confessor. And so this video is the first video in a new video series, and where I want to talk about and provide biographical background information on the lives of various church fathers. And so today we're going to be focusing on Saint Maximus the Confessor, arguably my favorite church father, thus far, at least in my Orthodox journey. And so I thought it'd be useful if maybe once or twice a month I did a video on who was St. Basil the Great, who was Simeon the New Theologian. And so just talking about the biographical background information on their lives and then their importance in regards to the church. So not diving into their works, not diving into their theology or anything like that, just background information. So then after a year to 2 years, there's going to be a nice video library for people, novices, people coming into Orthodoxy where they can find biographical information on the various church fathers. Now, what spawned the idea to even do that was that I plan on and wanted to make a series of videos moving through the cosmic mystery of Jesus Christ by St. Maximus the Confessor. And so I've been thinking about how to put this together into a video series, how to put it in a 2-part series. That's at least my goal right now. And I thought, geez, it'd be useful, obviously, to talk about who St. Maximus is. And I usually do this in my videos, but that almost deserves its own video. And so when we get into the introduction to this book and then move through that text, all this stuff is already there, and we can just reference to this video for people to learn more about it. So that's what literally prompted me to think, oh, well, maybe I should create a new video series once or twice a month, just talking about church fathers and providing biographical background information. And this is the first of. And so St. Maximus has a very special place in my heart because it is this book that was the first patristic work that I purchased in my journey to Orthodoxy. So as you guys know who are familiar with my story, I did a semester reading Orthodox theology, mostly all modernist theologians. When I say modernist, I'm just meaning really mostly 20th century forward, so more contemporary period of theologians. And then it was after that I bought this work because, as you know, my interest in Logos theology and then Maximus's focus on Christology, the incarnation of the Logos-Logoi distinction, and theosis. This book really, really was important to me, and then my further insatiable appetite for Orthodox theology. So I really wanted to work through this text, and like I said, Maximus has a special place in my heart because he was the doorway for me, really the patristic doorway into Orthodoxy. And so that's why he's arguably my favorite church father. That's why we're making this video. That's why I want to work through this. And also, I'd like to work through the next one on the incarnation in regards to St. Athanasius. So those are what you can expect. I have given my sweet spot for St. Maximus. If you guys check out my new website, which I hope I have some links up here, whether you go to davidpatrickcarey.com or churchoftheeternallogos.com, it's going to take you to the same place. My new website is up. It's out and about. I'd be very interested for you guys to check it out and give me some feedback. It's very basic. It's kind of a home page, an about page, contact, blog. But it's aesthetically pleasing, and when you scroll through the homepage there, you're going to see a little section there sort of venerating St. Maximus the Confessor. So if you guys are interested, if you have a moment, I'd appreciate if you check out my new website and then leave some comments in the comment section. Also, with that being said, like I mentioned, I wanted to make a video series on the cosmic mystery of Jesus Christ. The introductory video to that is going to be available either Sunday or Monday. And then for those of you who might be interested, I've been in contact with Made by Jim Bob. the incredible cartoonist. He had a recent conversation with Jay Dyer, and we are going to do a live stream together on Tuesday morning, March 3rd, Tuesday morning. I haven't done a live stream before on YouTube, so I really need to figure out how exactly you use Skype and Zoom and incorporate that into a live stream. I haven't done that yet. And so potentially we may not live stream it. We may just record our conversation, then I upload that sort of edited at a later date, maybe the next day or later that day. Not sure right now, but planning on doing a live stream with Made by Jim Bob Tuesday morning. Again, not specific on the time, probably on Eastern Standard Time, probably somewhere between 10 and noon. And we are going to be talking about the New Age, spiritual but not religious, kind of where we were in our spiritual journey or progression, talking about masculinity, fatherhood, as well as his incredible cartoons. So that might be something you guys would be interested in. That is Tuesday morning, March 3rd. So with all that being said, now let's just get into the video. And so who was Saint Maximus the Confessor? Well, Saint Maximus is one of the more important of our church fathers, especially in regards to the refutation of monothelitism. So Maximus was born, we don't know much about his early childhood. Unlike some of the other people we will cover, we just don't know much about his adolescence. We know that he was born in 580. We don't know what city. Some speculate Haspin, some speculate the Golan Heights, some speculate Constantinople. Now, from church tradition and most even scholarly consensus says he's most likely born in Constantinople, given his incredible education in regards to philosophy and theology, mathematics, grammar, and all this stuff. So most likely he was born in Constantinople. Most likely he was born to, at least this is the Orthodox Christian understanding, because we don't know much. He was born to a pious Christian family. Most scholars, I didn't hear the church's position on the sort of wealth in relation to his family, but most scholars believe it was most likely an aristocratic family that he could acquire such an incredible education and then become a secretary, a chief counselor to the emperor, which we'll get to here in a second. So he was born in 580. He dies in 662, August 13th, 662. In fact, that's his feast day, August 13th, although that changes sometimes to January. August 13th, 662 is when he dies, and he dies somewhere in modern Georgia. He's exiled, and we're going to get to this. And so, unfortunately, when he's exiled, he has his right hand cut off and his tongue cut out along with two of his students. So, again, we're going to get to that here in a second. Now, what we do know is that he was incredibly intelligent. We know that he sort of had a magnetic personality that almost wherever he went, people enjoyed him. They liked him. They thought he was very smart. They liked his pious nature. They enjoyed being around him. This was true for the emperor, who he eventually works for, Heraclius. So we do know that. We know that he exists in between the sort of early and medieval Christianity. So he's a very influential person in a sort of betwixt time frame before East and West, Roman and the Byzantine Church are really at odds, because in fact in our story today we're going to talking about his life. He's going to appeal to the Pope. He's going to appeal to the Latins and the Roman Church, trying to fight the heresy of the monothelites. So, which is also going to bring up the synodal understanding of how things were working back then. It's going to represent how the papacy, if he could have worked ex cathedra, he would have done this, but we'll bring that up when we get there. So, St. Maximus the Confessor, what we do know, basically starts with his adulthood, and he becomes the first secretary, the chief counselor to Emperor Heraclius. And Heraclius, from all indications, at least from what I was reading in regards to how the Orthodox Church understands it, that he was very impressed by St. Maximus, not just his intelligence, but his pious humility. And that's why he became chief counselor. And on St. Maximus's side, he, working for the emperor, begins to recognize, becomes aware of the prevalence of the monothelite heresy. And so he sees it within the emperor. He begins to see it in the clergy. He begins to see it in other theologians. And then he really begins to see it in regards to the various patriarchal thrones. I mean, so at this time when he's working for Heraclius, you got Sergius I of Constantinople, monothelite. Then you have Athanasius of Antioch, a monothelite, and you have Cyrus of Alexandria, a monothelite. So three of the larger patriarchal thrones in the Eastern Church are all occupied by monothelites. And so seeing this and seeing the prevalence of it, he actually resigns from his post as the chief counselor to the emperor. And it's at this time that St. Maximus actually joins the monastery, becomes a monk. And he really devotes the rest of his life to fighting the heresy of the monothelites. And so let's say around 630 is when he's it's because some of these dates are really ambiguous. It's hard to give a definitive date or year for a lot of his life. Around 630 is when he resigns. He becomes a monk. He spends about 6 years in and around Alexandria. He actually spends quite a bit of time in Africa, northern Africa. So about 6 years in and around Alexandria, preaching, fighting the monothelites, fighting the Nestorians. And so a thing to highlight here, at least theologically, is that the Nestorians, so Maximus's position on here of the monothelitism being the heresy that Jesus Christ only has one will, the divine will, where the official Orthodox position that Maximus is fighting for is that he has both fully human and fully divine will that are joined in a hypostatic union, right, in his personhood. Now, the difficulty with this is that the monothelites, who are arguing for only a single divine will, says, well, really conceptually, if you say that he has a fully human will and then a fully divine will, you're basically leading towards Nestorianism. And what I think this is highlighting is the dialectical problem of really the Hellenistic and Western mind because the Latin Church continues the Hellenistic philosophical project, but that you're seeing this inability to collapse the dialectics, right? Human will, divine will. Well, you can't have both, so we'll just say the divine will supersedes the human will. Well, then you have the Nestorians. Well, human will, divine will. I guess he's more human, than he was divine, or something like this. Well, the Orthodox position is, again, we collapse these dialectics, and I think the pattern here is always three. So we have divine will, human will. Together we have the personhood of the incarnated Logos. That's a sort of third option, right? It's a collapsing of these dialectics as opposed to always being stuck and going back and forth. So this is what he's dealing with in regards to Christological controversies at the time. And mind you, the monothelitism has already been condemned in a previous council, and then will be re-condemned in 681 at the Council of Constantinople after the death of St. Maximus. So he will be vindicated eventually, but it isn't until 681 in the Council of Constantinople, which they again condemn the monothelite heresy. So around 630, again, he's resigned from his imperial post. He's now a monk. He's devoting his life to defending the authentic theology, fighting the monothelite heresy. He spends about 6 years in and around Alexandria. Then he moves around, we'd say 636, 637, and spends about 5 years in Carthage, so again in northern Africa. So where the story really gets going is in 645, he has a debate with Pyrrhus. So Pyrrhus who eventually becomes the Patriarch of Constantinople, he is a monothelite. Eventually, actually fleeing Constantinople due to things that are happening in the court, he finds St. Maximus. They're actually in the same city, and so Pyrrhus and Maximus actually do a public debate, which ends with Pyrrhus conceding that renouncing his position with the monothelite position. So this then insinuates that Maximus won. Maximus has fully articulated, defended the true theology, and then they journey to Rome. Why Rome? Because, as I mentioned, three of the very important patriarchal thrones are occupied by monothelites in the East, and Heraclius was a monothelite, and eventually he dies, and then the emperor that comes into his place, Constans II, is a big monothelite, and he's interested in persecuting and arresting people who oppose his monothelite position. So we can already see the sort of sinister, how the devil, if you will, how Satan, how evil is always trying to corrupt the theology one way or another, and how we see these corruptions in theology always being tied to people who don't actually exhibit, let's say, the most Christian behavior. So Constans II, he becomes emperor, and he's a big monothelite. Well, 645, Maximus has the debate with Pyrrhus. Pyrrhus renounces his position as a monothelite. They both travel to Rome. Eventually, Pyrrhus leaves Rome, goes back to Constantinople, and really renounces his renunciation, and then re-embraces his monothelite position, becomes the Patriarch of Constantinople. In 649, so St. Maximus he's now, he was in Rome with Pyrrhus. Pyrrhus is gone. In Rome, he's finding an ally in Pope Martin I. Pope Martin I, who's actually also referred to in the Orthodox Church as Saint Martin the Confessor. And the difference between a confessor and a martyr, the reason why Maximus is called Maximus the Confessor, or Pope Saint Martin referred to as Martin the Confessor, is a confessor is somebody who is injured, is maimed, if you will, but isn't killed. So they defend the tradition, and that's what I was saying. Maximus has his tongue cut out, his right hand cut off, but that's not what kills him, right? It's not like Justin Martyr, who is literally beheaded along with his students. That's not what happens. They cut off his right hand, they cut out his tongue, and then eventually he dies later, but this is where we call him a confessor. So he appeals to Pope Martin I in Rome because the Latins had already rejected the monothelite position. So here we're seeing how the original church really worked, right? So yeah, we're giving the Bishop of Rome a sort of a title of Pope. The whole papal infallibility and all this stuff isn't working because Pope Martin actually calls a synod, convenes a council, a Lateran council, to condemn monothelitism. It actually takes place in northern Africa, in Carthage. And so we see that if he could work at ex cathedra, if the Pope was infallible and he can just change doctrine, well, he would have just done it right then and there, but he didn't. He convened a council, he convened a synod, and they deemed it to be heretical. And so Pope Martin, then representing the sort of Western voice who St. Maximus is appealing to and taking refuge in Rome, both of them are eventually arrested due to the orders of Constans II, Byzantine emperor, back in Constantinople. So he issues the arrest for St. Maximus and Pope Martin. They both get arrested. Unfortunately, Pope Martin ends up dying in their custody. And then Maximus is exiled and all this stuff, eventually brought to Constantinople. But one of the things I wanted to say before I go further in regards to Carthage, because those of you who are going to be familiar with Augustine, that Carthage is not the Carthage of the time of Augustine. So his his sort of form of Christianity, his opponents, that tension is no longer really present in Carthage. Carthage is a bit of a different place, and that's why Maximus was really a sort of saving grace in terms of going through Africa and providing them with the correct theology. So, anyways, 653. So we got 649. We have the council, the Lateran Council, convened by Pope Martin I, who actually the paperwork there is believed to have actually been written by Maximus. From my research, sometimes you'll see that there's 105 bishops. According to the Orthodox position, there was 187 bishops, 150 of which were of the West, 37 of which were from the East. And all of them are that is the council, that is the synod that was condemning. Of course, this isn't one of the ecumenical councils of 681, the Council of Constantinople. This is just one that Pope Martin convened. And mind you, Pope Martin actually isn't even recognized by the emperor. He's one of the, I believe he is maybe the only pope who wasn't recognized by Byzantium. I'm not sure, but I know he wasn't, and I think he was the only one. But you guys can fact check me on that. So that happens in 649. 653, we have Constans II arrests Maximus, arrests Pope Martin. They're both tried as heretics. Unfortunately, Pope Martin dies in their custody. Maximus the Confessor survives, if you will, is found to be a heretic, and he's sent in exile. And it isn't until later that he's sent back to Constantinople. So he was exiled, I believe, in Thrace. I'm not positive where he was. I can't remember where he was first exiled, but he's sent back. So he's exiled. He's sent back to Constantinople. After being exiled, so he's arrested, sent to Constantinople, exiled for 4 years, sent back to Constantinople, and it's here in 658. Yeah, okay, so 658, then he's sent out for 4 more years. 662, then, this is where the year he's going to die. This is the year in which he's tried again as a heretic, and he has his tongue cut out and his right hand cut off, along with 2 of his students that were defending him. So we have 649 is the council between Maximus and Pope Martin that they convene. 653 is when Emperor Constans issues their arrest. It's 654 in which they're actually arrested. Pope Martin dies. St. Maximus is taken to Constantinople. He is then exiled, and it isn't until 658 he's brought out of exile, brought back to Constantinople, reconvicted as a heretic again, exiled for 4 more years, then brought back to Constantinople. 662. This is the year that he dies, and it's in 662 that he has his tongue cut out and his right hand cut off, along with 2 of his students. And then he's exiled to modern-day Georgia, and he dies a short time later, which is believed both by tradition and by secular scholars to be on August 13th, 662. August 13th, 662. So that is really what we know about St. Maximus and his sort of biographical information about his life. What's interesting in regards to church tradition is that Maximus was actually received sort of divine revelation from God about the date of his death. So according to the church or church legend, Maximus was actually informed by God that he was going to die on August 13th, 662. So that's pretty interesting. And then along with church tradition as well, it says that upon his death, at his grave appeared 3 candles, which began to burn miraculously. And I love that there's 3 candles because this really emphasizes the Trinitarian, the trifold, the tripartite nature to theology. But according to church, the light represents the light that Maximus was while he was alive and shining in the world in regards to the correct Orthodox faith. And it's also said, according to church legend, that many healings have taken place at his grave. So, very interesting stuff there. Now, in regards to his legacy, of course, he is an incredibly important church father, sometimes argued as one of the more important. He has an incredible theological legacy that he gave, and so some of the topics I already mentioned that he focuses on, but big on Christology, obviously. I mean, how much he devoted his life against fighting monothelitism. Also, in regards to the personhood of the Trinity, this is a big one, the personhood of the Trinity. He also contributed to that. The incarnation of the Logos. And this is what really this book, so we're going to be, what's so great about this little book, because it's really just taking excerpts and sections from his work. This is not a complete work of Maximus, but it hits all the really strong points of his theology. So the personhood, Christology, the incarnation of the logoi distinction, human anthropology, the cosmic ramifications of the incarnation of God. This is what the cosmic mystery is about, is the cosmic ramifications of divine nature, human nature, of uncreated, created, becoming one, becoming fused, if you will, through Jesus Christ, Jesus of Nazareth, the incarnation of the Logos. So then anthropology, as well as he's very prominent in regards to talking about theosis and deification. So these are some of the main areas where he is really contributing. So Christology, personhood, incarnation of the logoi distinction, human anthropology, and theosis. Those, I would say, are probably the main areas where he contributes the most, which is going to be different from somebody like when we get into St. John of Damascus in terms of iconography, how to use secular philosophical knowledge, stuff like that. And mind you, Maximus, he was well aware. What's another interesting point is he saw all the heresies of the Neoplatonists. He was aware of the sort of pagan philosophical world. He was knowledgeable about all this stuff, and that's why I think his theology, I don't know, I just really like it, and he's a great person to read. Even though one of the things that I saw is that scholars claim that, and even Maximus himself says he was never educated in rhetoric. So scholars who are more sophisticated in their analysis say that he doesn't exude the sort of high stylistic dimensions of his rhetoric, which was common amongst the sort of Byzantine elite. But if you read his stuff, it is incredibly poetic. In fact, I think I have one thing real quick just on him talking about theosis. So here's a little thing from Maximus talking about theosis, and it's just so beautiful. So he says, "Nothing in theosis is the product of human nature," St. Maximus writes in his letter to his friend Thalassius. "For nature cannot comprehend God. It is only the mercy of God that has the capacity to endow theosis onto the existing. In theosis, man, the image of God, becomes likened to God. He rejoices in all the plenitude that does not belong to him by nature, because the grace of the Spirit triumphs within him, and because God acts in him." So that is just one little excerpt I grabbed from an Orthodox website talking about Maximus. But if you read his stuff, it's very beautiful, very poetic at times, although, again, he's cited as not being fully trained in rhetoric. He was greatly influenced by Dionysius the Areopagite. I now try to not say pseudo-Dionysius. Thank you to Brother Jay Dyer. He actually sent me an article after seeing one of my videos on pseudo-Dionysius and his mystical theology, written by an Orthodox individual, I believe it was a priest, talking about how maybe pseudo-Dionysius is the actual Dionysius of Acts, where Paul evangelizes to the Athenians. I was always under the impression, because of most scholarship says that, well, this is pseudo-Dionysius, and this was written in the 5th century, and therefore this is why it has all these Neoplatonic elements. However, the article that Jay showed me makes the claim that, well, maybe this is actually Pseudo-Dionysius the Areopagite, and the Neoplatonists were reading him, and that's why the overlap is that the Neoplatonists were actually reading Dionysius the Areopagite, and this really is the individual mentioned in the book of Acts by, would be Luke, right? Luke is the author of Acts. So that's really interesting, and now I try not to say Pseudo-Dionysius. So Dionysius the Areopagite, the Desert Fathers, and I'm sure he was greatly influenced by a lot of the different thinkers and shakers in the Orthodox world at that time, but he does have a specific discussion on St. Gregory the Theologian. So I included him, although I'm sure there's more influence. It's just Maximus is known for his relationship to Dionysius the Areopagite, his likeness for the Desert Fathers, and then he has a discussion on St. Gregory the Theologian that I just wanted to highlight. And then his work was continued by a couple individuals that I want to get into later as well. Simeon the New Theologian, I got his stuff right here. Simeon the New Theologian and Gregory Palamas, both of which sort of continue the work of Maximus in their own right, of course addressing maybe different topics, but sort of carrying his torch further. So that I think that's worth noting. Simeon the New Theologian and Gregory Palamas. And then in regards to John Scotus Erigena, he actually he translates Maximus in the 9th century. John Scotus is an Irish philosopher, sort of mystic. He translates Maximus, and then he actually continues Maximus' interest into Dionysius the Areopagite. So I thought that was interesting and just worth noting. And then, of course, as I already mentioned, Maximus, his whole life work is vindicated in 681 at the Council of Constantinople when they officially say that the monothelite position is a heresy. And I just wanted to say, I feel the more I learn about church history, the more I learn about the Orthodox Church, it is rather amazing that the theology could have survived. There does seem to be a sort of divine providential element with the church. When you look at the time of Maximus, when you see the three more important patriarchal thrones occupied by monothelites, the emperor of the empire, the Byzantine Empire, is a monothelite, who's then succeeded by an even more vigilant monothelite who's actually condemning and arresting people who have different theology. And yet somehow the truth, the correct theology, ended up winning out. And it just makes you think that maybe, just maybe, if you're a doubter, there is some sort of mystical, providential element here to the Orthodox Church and its sort of maintenance of the correct theology throughout the years. So that really concludes this video of who was St. Maximus the Confessor. Again, we are going to be getting deeper and deeper into his work in the next video, where we're going to be talking about the introduction to this book of St. Maximus the Confessor. He's personally probably my favorite. After him, I'm a big fan of John of Damascus. Thank you to Jay Dyer and him recommending this book right here. Big fan. So that concludes it. Let me know what you guys think. Is there anything in particular you think I missed? I've covered multiple sources here and think I really hit on the high points in regarding St. Maximus' life and biography. But if you think I missed something, please leave a comment in the comment section so anybody coming to see this video in the future can also see your comment and potentially a discussion after it to help contextualize and inform and aid everybody. So thank you guys. Please like, share, and subscribe this video if you can. Please like, share, and subscribe. Sharing it is the most helpful, obviously. And if you guys have a minute, please check out my website, davidpatrickharry.com. churchoftheeternallogos.com goes to the same website. And let me know what you guys think. Right now, again, it's very basic. I plan on adding a probably recommended reading page. I plan on reading a church fathers page, so just like kind of what we're doing here. Having maybe an icon and a few quotes from various church fathers and maybe quick biographies or something like that. So it's a very informative, maybe subsection to the website. And then my goal, eventually in the next few months, continuing to, God willing, continuing to make videos and grow, to eventually make a subscription model where exclusive content, exclusive interviews, exclusive videos can only be accessed through a $4.99 a month subscription to the website. And I have a whole bunch of ideas that for those people that we can do that I think is really going to be worth the cup of coffee that $4.99, $5 a month really is. And so I really think you're going to get a lot out of that. But that's in the future. Right now, I don't think we're in a position or have a large enough following to really start devoting more and more energy to making more content for exclusive members. That's going to be a fairly small number to begin with, but that is in the future. And then I also want to include a store will be added to the website as well, and just a lot of information. So if you have recommendations on what to add to the website, if you have a moment to check it out, I would greatly appreciate that. Right now it's pretty basic, but I think it's aesthetically pleasing and would be interested in your guys' feedback. So again, thank you for that. If you have a moment to check out the website, again, please like, share, and subscribe to the video. And as always, until, let's see, Tuesday or Monday, when I'll have the introductory video on the cosmic mystery of Jesus Christ, and Tuesday, my conversation with Made by Jim Bob. Until then, as always, God bless.